Reba McEntire is the polished voice of country music, the controlled smile on stage, the figure in red gowns holding a microphone like it weighs nothing. But behind that image sits a body shaped by labor, rejection, and loss that never fully loosened its grip. Raised in a rodeo family where injuries were routine, where money was thin and work was constant. A childhood split between school desks and long drives to arenas, between singing quietly and watching her father risk his spine on a bull. Fame did not arrive gently. It came after years of being ignored, misheard, and reshaped by people who didn't see her clearly. And when success finally stabilized, it demanded a price measured in exhaustion, in separation, and later, in sudden, irreversible loss. What does it mean to spend decades building a life that can fracture in a single phone call? What does a voice carry when it has outlived the people who helped shape it? If this video reaches you, leave a like, not for the fame, but for the endurance behind it. She was born in 1955 in McAlester, Oklahoma. But the center of her life was the land near Chalky. The ground there is not soft. It's dry, uneven, and functional. Produces work, not comfort. Her father, Clark McEntire, was a champion steer roper. His hands were thick, his schedule controlled by rodeo circuits, and his expectations were rigid. Her mother, Jacqueline, had once wanted a singing career of her own but had stepped away from that path. Instead, she trained her children to sing in harmony, often in a living room where the furniture was practical and the time was limited. The structure of her childhood was physical. Early mornings, long drives, livestock routines. Singing existed, but it did not dominate the household. It was fitted between chores. She learned control early, not emotional expression, but control of pitch, control of breath, control of presence. Mistakes were corrected quickly. There was no indulgence in self-pity. Statistically, rural families tied to agriculture and rodeo culture in mid-20th century America operated on unstable income cycles. Injuries were common. Insurance coverage was inconsistent. Children contributed labor early. In that environment, ambition is often redirected into survival. For Reba, music became a parallel track, not an escape but an additional responsibility. She attended Kiowa High School. The building was small. The expectations were local. She sang at school events, joined with her siblings as the singing McEntires, and performed at rodeos. The stages were temporary. Metal bleachers, dirt floors. Crowds focused more on the next ride than the songs between. Her voice was strong, but it wasn't immediately marketable. It didn't fit neatly into the polished Nashville sound of the 1970s. When she enrolled at Southeastern Oklahoma State University, she studied education. The plan was practical. Become a teacher, maintain stability. Music remained secondary. The turning point often gets simplified into a single moment. Singing the national anthem at the National Finals Rodeo in 1974. Red Steagall, a country artist, heard her and helped arrange a trip to Nashville. But the reality after that moment was not a direct rise. It was a series of small, grinding disappointments. Her first recordings did not perform well. Producers tried to shape her voice into trends that were already fading. The industry at the time favored established female acts or very specific vocal styles. She was neither fully traditional nor fully contemporary. She sat in a gap that made executives uncertain. Rejection in Nashville is not abstract. It is physical. It is long waits in offices, short meetings, polite dismissals. It is recording sessions where the final product does not resemble the singer's instincts. It is contracts that limit creative control. Reba experienced this repeatedly. Her early albums in the late 1970s failed to gain traction. Chart positions were low. Radio play was inconsistent. During this period, financial pressure remained. Unlike artists who arrived with strong backing, she had to maintain a working rhythm. Touring small venues, traveling constantly, managing costs. The body absorbs that routine. Late nights, early departures, inconsistent meals, vocal strain. There is no glamour in that phase. Just repetition. She married Charlie Battles in 1976, a steer wrestling champion significantly older than her. The relationship reflected the environment she came from. Structured, traditional, and often controlling. Battles managed aspects of her career. The dynamic limited her independence at a time when she was still trying to define her voice in an industry already resistant to her. By the early 1980s, frustration had built. She felt disconnected from the music being produced under her name. This is a common breaking point for artists. Industry data shows that a large percentage of performers dropped by labels within the first few years, cite creative mismatch as a primary factor. Reba pushed back. She demanded a shift toward a more traditional country sound, closer to what she had grown up with. That decision marked a change, but it did not erase the years of stagnation. It also came with risk. Pushing against label direction can result in contract termination. For her, it resulted in a slow recalibration. Albums like My Kind of Country began to align her public output with her internal sense of identity. But even as her career began to stabilize, the foundation remained shaped by those early years. Controlled emotion, disciplined work, and an understanding that success could disappear as quickly as it arrived. Her childhood had not prepared her for ease. It had prepared her for endurance. And that endurance would become essential later, when the stakes moved far beyond record sales and chart positions. By the mid-1980s, Reba McEntire had begun to correct the direction of her career, but the correction came with a cost that wasn't visible on album covers. The shift toward a more traditional country sound required her to assert control in rooms where she had previously stayed quiet. That change altered how she was perceived, not just as a singer, but as a business presence. It also strained the structure of her personal life. Her marriage to Charlie Battles deteriorated as her independence grew. The imbalance became harder to maintain. She was working longer hours, making more decisions, and building a career that required flexibility and constant movement. Battles remained tied to a different pace and a different expectation of control. By 1987, the marriage ended. Divorce is often reduced to paperwork, but the physical reality is more complex. Relocation, financial disentanglement, and the abrupt removal of a daily presence that had defined routines for over a decade. Professionally, however, the late 1980s marked acceleration. Albums began charting higher. Radio embraced her more consistent identity. Touring expanded from small venues to larger arenas. With that growth came a stricter schedule. Touring cycles tightened. Rest periods shortened. Vocal maintenance became critical. Country music touring during this era was physically demanding. Long bus rides, limited recovery time, and frequent performances without the support systems that later became standard in the industry. She remarried in 1989 to Narvel Blackstock, her manager. The relationship merged personal and professional structures. On paper, it created stability. In practice, it fused two high-pressure roles into one continuous environment. Business decisions extended into private life. There was no clear boundary where work ended. This arrangement can increase efficiency, but it also concentrates stress. At the same time, her visibility expanded beyond music. She entered acting, first cautiously, then with more commitment. Film and television required a different type of endurance. Long hours on set, repeated takes, physical stillness followed by sudden bursts of performance. It added another layer to her already compressed schedule. By 1991, her career was no longer fragile. It was established, profitable, and expanding. That year was supposed to be another step forward. Instead, it became the point where control collapsed. On March 16, 1991, after a private concert in San Diego, 2 planes carrying members of her band and crew departed for Fort Wayne, Indiana. Reba did not board. She stayed behind due to illness and fatigue. The planes never reached their destination. One crashed into Otay Mountain shortly after takeoff. The impact was immediate. There were no survivors. 8 members of her band and crew died that night. The details are blunt. The aircraft struck terrain in low visibility conditions. There was no extended rescue window. The loss was total. For Reba, the aftermath was not public first. It was internal, immediate, and disorienting. These were not distant colleagues. They were people she worked with daily. Shared buses, shared stages, shared routines. The sudden absence created a structural void in her life. Grief in this context is not abstract. It is the removal of voices that filled specific roles. Someone who tuned instruments, someone who handled logistics, someone who stood a few feet behind during every performance. The silence is practical before it is emotional. There are tasks that no longer have owners. There are habits that no longer have counterparts. Statistically, traumatic loss within close working groups produces long-term psychological effects similar to those observed in military units or emergency response teams. Survivors often experience persistent guilt, especially when absence from the event contributed to survival. Reba has spoken openly about this, about questioning why she wasn't on that plane, about the randomness of survival. The industry does not pause for grief. Tours are rescheduled. Contracts remain active. Expectations continue. Within months, she returned to work. Not because the loss had diminished, but because the structure of her life required movement. Her album, For My Broken Heart, released later that year, directly reflected the loss. It sold millions of copies. Commercial success and personal grief existed simultaneously, without canceling each other out. Performing after that event required a different type of control. Every stage carried memory. Every song existed in a space where the people who once played alongside her were gone. There is no technical training for that adjustment. It becomes a matter of repetition, show after show, allowing the body to relearn the act of performing without the previous context. Through the 1990s, she maintained a high output. Albums, tours, acting roles. On the surface, it looked like sustained success. Underneath, the pace functioned as a form of containment. Staying in motion limits the time available for reflection. Many high-output performers operate this way after trauma. It is not avoidance in a simple sense. It is a way to keep the structure intact. Her television work, particularly her sitcom in the early 2000s, added another layer of public identity. Comedy requires timing, physical awareness, and emotional separation from personal grief. It demands precision, maintaining that while carrying unresolved loss requires compartmentalization. Then, another structural shift. In 2015, her marriage to Narvel Blackstock ended after 26 years. The separation was quiet publicly, but the implications were extensive. This was not just a personal relationship ending. It was the dissolution of a long-standing professional partnership. Management structures had to be rebuilt. Financial and operational systems had to be redefined. Daily routines changed again. Divorce later in life carries different weight than earlier separations. By that point, patterns are deeply set. Habits are fixed. The removal of a long-term partner creates not just emotional absence, but logistical gaps, decision-making, scheduling, shared responsibilities. Through all of this, her public image remained controlled. Interviews were measured. Appearances were consistent. There were no visible breakdowns. But the accumulation of events, years of early rejection, a controlling first marriage, the sudden loss of her band, the sustained pressure of touring, the eventual collapse of a decades-long partnership, formed a continuous line of strain. Success did not remove instability. It reorganized it. And by the time she moved into her late 60s and early 70s, the question was no longer about maintaining a career. It was about sustaining the body and mind that had carried that career through decades of pressure, loss, and constant movement. By the time Reba McEntire reached her 70s, the structure of her life had narrowed. Not in visibility, she was still performing, still appearing on television, still recording, but in how her body handled the demands that once felt routine. A touring day in her 40s and 50s could stretch without consequence. In her 70s, it becomes mechanical. Wake up earlier than necessary because sleep no longer holds as long. The body stiffens overnight, joints slower, back tighter, voice lower until warmed. Hydration becomes deliberate. Vocal exercises are not optional. They are required just to reach baseline. There is less margin for error. One strained performance can take days to correct. Aging in performance-based careers follows a measurable pattern. Studies on vocal endurance show that elasticity in vocal cords reduces over time. Recovery slows. Breath control requires more effort. For singers, this translates into careful set list management, adjusting keys, spacing demanding songs, building in rest periods. Reba has had to adapt in exactly this way. The voice remains recognizable, but the way it is maintained has changed entirely. Her schedule now reflects this adjustment. Fewer consecutive performances. More recovery time between shows. Controlled travel arrangements. The large, chaotic tours of earlier decades are replaced with structured residencies and selective appearances. This is not a reduction of ambition. It is a recalibration to preserve function. Daily life outside of performance is quieter, but not inactive. Movement is intentional. Light exercise to maintain joint mobility. Vocal rest periods where she avoids unnecessary speaking. Diet becomes functional rather than indulgent. Foods that reduce inflammation, maintain energy, protect the throat. These are not lifestyle choices in the casual sense. They are maintenance protocols. Emotionally, the past remains present. The 1991 plane crash is not an event that resolves. It integrates. Anniversaries pass, but memory does not fade in a linear way. Interviews over the years have shown that the details remain intact. Names, moments, the sequence of that night. Trauma stored over decades often becomes quieter, but more permanent. The divorce from Narvel Blackstock reshaped her later years in a different way. After decades of shared structure, she rebuilt her personal and professional boundaries. This process in later life requires conscious effort. Patterns that have existed for over 25 years do not dissolve easily. Decision-making becomes solitary again. Trust is recalibrated. The pace of adaptation is slower, but the changes are deeper. She eventually formed a relationship with Rex Linn, an actor known for a steady, less volatile presence. The dynamic is different from her previous marriages. Less entangled in management, less defined by control. At this stage, relationships often shift from expansion to stabilization. Shared routines, mutual support, reduced conflict. It is less about building something new and more about maintaining equilibrium. Statistically, individuals in their 70s begin to confront cumulative health risks: cardiovascular strain, joint degeneration, reduced immune response. Even without major illness, the body becomes more vulnerable to minor disruptions. A cold lasts longer. Fatigue accumulates faster. Recovery is incomplete rather than full. For someone still performing, this creates a constant balancing act between activity and preservation. Reba continues to work, but the awareness of limitation is embedded in every decision. There is no denial of age. Instead, there is negotiation with it. Each performance is planned with the understanding that the body must still function the next day. The tragedy often associated with her life is not a single event. It is the accumulation. A childhood built on discipline rather than comfort. Years of professional rejection that reshaped her identity. A first marriage that restricted her autonomy. The sudden, irreversible loss of her band. 8 lives removed in one moment. Decades of sustained pressure to remain visible and successful. And finally, the quiet dismantling of a long-term partnership later in life. None of these events exist in isolation. They layer. They influence how she moves, how she works, how she trusts, how she rests. By 71, the question is not whether she succeeded. That is measurable. The question is how much of that success was carried on a body and mind that never fully stopped absorbing impact. There is no clean resolution to that kind of life. There is only continuation. She still steps onto stages. The lights still come on. The audience still responds. But behind that moment is a system that requires constant management. Physical, emotional, logistical. The performance lasts hours. The maintenance lasts all day. And eventually, like all performers, she will step away. Not abruptly, but gradually. Fewer shows. Longer breaks. A final performance that may not be announced as final at all. Just an absence that becomes permanent. What remains then is not the spectacle, but the record of endurance. A voice that persisted through conditions that repeatedly tested its limits. A life that did not simplify with success, but became more complex with each passing decade. So when people look at her at 71, they see the image first. The composed figure. The controlled voice. What they don't immediately see is the accumulation underneath. The routines, the losses, the adjustments, the continuous effort required to maintain that image. And that is where the real weight sits. So, what do you think about this video? Let us know in the comments below. If this moved you, leave a like as a quiet tribute to the years behind the spotlight. And don't forget to subscribe. We go deeper than the headlines, into the parts of these lives that are usually left out. Until next time.